Well, it goes back to my notion of incentives. What matters for your business? Some businesses care about profit, some care about balance sheet strength, some care about growth, some care about leads in the door. So you may want to incentivize your marketing team on bringing in good leads. You may want to incentivize your sales team on closing leads or closing leads quickly.
Welcome to Think Business with Tyler, sharing our methods and strategies for success. Join in on our conversations with business owners as we highlight their triumphs and detail how they overcame the challenges they faced while continuing to grow and scale their business. It's time to think life, think success, and think business with your host, Tyler Martin.
Hey, you business legends. Get ready for a fascinating chat with Nick Jain on today's episode. We'll dive into risk-taking in business, the power of effective incentives, and some poker strategy insights. Let's get going. Here's Tyler.
Hey, Nick, welcome to the Think Business with Tyler podcast show. How's it going today?
I'm doing well. It's a beautiful day here in Philadelphia, and the weather's just beginning to turn towards autumn.
Oh, nice. I'm in Northern California, and we also, fortunately, have a beautiful day. It's been really super hot here lately, so it's kind of nice. It looks like it's actually calming down a little bit. It's nice to not be in these really hot weather for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Hey, the way I love to start out is I'd love to find out a little bit about what you do professionally. That's number one. And then number two, if you could share something about yourself personally, I know that myself and the audience would love to learn about that too.
Sure. First, again, thanks for having me here. So what I do professionally, my career is really divided into two pieces. For the first 10 years, I was in Wall Street as a professional investor at some large private equity firms and hedge funds like Bain Capital, like big places investing in big companies. And for the last 5 or 6 years, I have somehow turned into what's called a professional CEO. So I have run 3 companies in 3 vastly different industries. First was a $100 million revenue trucking company with, trucks moving around the country, warehouses. Second was a small, tiny $2 million revenue men's shoe startup selling shoes online. And third, which is where I am currently, is Idea Scale, which is a business to business software company. So we sell software similar to like a HubSpot or Salesforce, except instead of a CRM, we're selling a software that helps large companies innovate, or large organizations, I should say, both government and private sector. Does that make sense professionally before I go into the personal side?
Yeah, that makes a lot. Of course, it opens up like a zillion questions, but we'll get there. Let's talk about you personally a little bit.
Sure. So personally, I've grown up now in 3 different countries, India, Canada, and I immigrated to the United States, nearly 20 years ago, finally became a citizen a year ago, which was a 19-year odyssey. I live in, my wife and I recently moved to Philadelphia about 2 years ago from New York City, and I'm about to have my first kid in like 2 months, which is my office is going to become a nursery. So I'm both excited and terrified about that stage of life.
Well, congratulations on having your child here in the next 2 months. Just out of curiosity, kind of migrating to a few different countries, what's it like going through those different countries? Do you miss one more than another? Or
Sure. So each one is vastly different, right? Like India is obviously, an Asian country, different language, different diet. My parents are from India, so it's kind of fun going when I go back there. It's been I think I was last back there about a year ago. Then I grew up in Canada, did all my, elementary, high school, childhood in Canada. The big, when I moved to the US, I thought the US would basically be like Canada, obviously same language, same TV shows, but it was surprisingly look, the politics are quite a bit different, weather's a bit different, the way people think about business or, work-life balance is quite different here. So each country, I think, has its own unique positive facets and differences. Obviously, now I'm here in the United States, been here for a long time. I'm married here and trying to build a family here. So this is, I think, my home for the indefinite or foreseeable future.
does cash flow have you down? Profit not where you think it should be? Maybe it's the long hours. Let's meet to see if I can help. I bridge driving the financial performance of your business to hit growth and success targets. Book a complimentary meeting at meetforgrowth.com to get started now. Once again, that's meetforgrowth.com. I look forward to talking with you. And thanks for listening to the show.
This is, I think, my home for the indefinite or foreseeable future.
Sure. Very cool. Very cool. Okay. Now I want to get into the meat and potatoes. So 3 businesses, you're right, totally different type of industries. So when I think trucking, I think, wow, a lot of equipment, transportation, thinking about that transportation routes and being as efficient as you can be. Men's shoes, I think, okay, consumers, male in particular. And now B2B software, you're working on a business basis, and it sounds like large companies. So you're right. They feel like they're all over the place. Is there any constant theme when you're thinking scaling and growing that overlaps between the three?
Sure. So I think that there's two that are really important for anyone. Number one is whatever business you're in, whether you're selling shoes, trucking, airlines, it's really important to understand, how does your business make money?
Mm.
And a lot of people really, that sounds like a really stupid or basic question, but a lot of people don't think about that as deeply as they should. And I'll give a specific example in a second. And then the second is, running a business is a skill that requires you to understand how finance works, how HR works, how operations works, how marketing works. And each of those skills is actually quite consistent, regardless of whether you're selling trucking or running warehousing, right? Like maybe the trucking part of trucking is very different than software, but the HR part is pretty similar. The finance and cash flows part is pretty similar. The marketing part is pretty similar. And so those skills have a lot, have followed me across different industries. So, let me just give an example of the first one. Like, how do you make money? The example I love to give is, imagine you're running a restaurant and you decide to sell filet mignon for $10 a pop. Okay. Really fancy steak. How does your business make money? And the answer is it doesn't. It can never do that. And a lot of people don't think about that. If you're selling a $40 steak, no matter how many of those steaks you sell, if you're selling them for $10, you're losing money every time you sell. And so that's a really important thing to do, because a lot of businesses actually engage in a lot of activities that lose money. And the more of them they do, the worse off they are. And so a lot of small businesses can actually just get ahead, improve themselves by looking through, hey, what's the stuff we just shouldn't be doing, and getting rid of that. Because the more you grow, the more those bad things compound. And so that's a really particular example that sounds stupid, but is actually you see that in a lot. And the filet mignon example is actually from a friend of mine who was running a chef and asked me to take a look at his business.
That's funny. It is true, though. To your point, you said something. You said deep thought. I think a lot of times business owners will okay, this is how I make money, but there isn't a lot of deep thought into how they make money. They don't go down that layer 2 or 3 levels deeper in terms of, okay, is this model working? Is this, I'm buying $40 steaks and selling them for 10. Hopefully they'd catch that one. But, there's very similar things to that, where it's a little bit more convoluted. And when you go to look at their GP, their gross profit, it's like they're making, you ask them, well, what's your gross profit? Oh, 60%. Really? Well, how come your financials are saying 10%? What's not adding up here? And so it's a really good point. Sorry for interrupting you, but I think that's awesome.
Yeah. And by the way, that's not just small businesses. There's, I'm not going to call them out. There's at least 3 publicly listed companies that I know that at one point were worth billions of dollars and have gone to zero, because turns out they were engaging in activities that lost money. And so the more they did, the more they grew, the worse off they got. And over time, the market figured that out. Maybe, the companies have collapsed dramatically since then.
But was their they must know that's happening, and is their strategy they'll get more investment capital, or they'll get some?
No, some more investment capital doesn't help then, right? Again, if you're running a business where you lose money every time you do something, the more times you do that, you lose more money.
Right.
It goes back to that comment that you just elucidated about deep thought, right? A lot of people, including very successful CEOs of billion-dollar companies, haven't really thought about, hey, how does my business make money? Is it engaging in the activities that actually create value for myself, my customers, my employees, as opposed to, hey, I got promoted a bunch and I'm the CEO of a company. That's a pretty cool title. I get paid a bunch of money, but do I actually understand my business or not? Right. And a lot of people surprisingly don't. They go through life, failing forward, I guess is the term.
Yeah, interesting. That is fascinating. Okay, so I interrupted you, got you a little off path. Could we go into a little bit more detail on the similarities in terms of, you talked about finance being similar, HR. Are there any nuggets in there in terms of setting up your teams where there is overlapping similarities?
Sure. So, the examples like you mentioned were finance, sales, marketing, and HR. So I'll tick through them very quickly, right? Finance, it boils down to 2 things, like how do you make money and managing cash flows, because those are 2 separate skills, right? When you're again using the steak restaurant, you have to buy the steaks before you sell them, right? So that's all about managing cash flows. How many steaks do I have? How many are sitting in the freezer so they don't, rot? How quickly can I sell them? That's a cash flow issue. But then conversely, you also need to be knowing that I can't sell a $40 steak for $10. So that's the financial planning and analysis effort. And that's, again, very important. Like, actually, a lot of small or mid-sized business owners don't spend time doing the accounting. And the accounting means all three statements. Do your income statement, your cash flow statement, your balance sheet, and like spend 10 hours. If you're not an expert at finance, either hire someone who actually understands this. I'm not talking an accountant, someone who understands like what those numbers mean, not how to add them up, or go take like a 10-hour free course online and to teach you, hey, what does a balance sheet actually mean and why it's important for you. So that's important on the finance side. On the HR side, I think there's two really critical skills. The first one I think people are good at, which is hiring people, right? Most owners or leaders of businesses get pretty good over time, like at making sure they, avoid people who are going to be ineffective and also hiring smart people. But I think where a lot of organizations fail or are suboptimal is incentivizing those people. So you went out and hired a bunch of smart people. Are you creating the internal incentives? And that could be money incentives, promotion incentives, pats on the back incentives to actually encourage them to excel. And a practical example of that at Idea Scale is pretty much every single person here is a compensation and rewards path is tied to the overall success of the company significantly. And the more senior you get, the less I care about what you individually are doing and more like you need to be doing what's right for the company. And because when the company does well, you have a great year. And if the company does poorly, you have a bad year. So you're never like protecting your own little work or domain, your marketing function, your engineering function. You're always trying to do what's right for the company because you realize it benefits you personally. People are candidly selfish. So you want to create incentives that align their selfishness with organization. So that incentive part is really important. And like a tactical example is that like, hey, if somebody did something that like crushed it for your organization, pay them a lot, like not that tiny bonus that you're planning on giving them, like give them an outsized portion of that, whether that be equity, like a multiplier bonus, something enormous that makes a difference for them, because then they will do that over and over and other people will see that. On marketing, like, hey, it's the same marketing skills, whether you're selling, bananas or software, right? How do you get traffic to your website? How do you convert people? How do you measure all of that? That is entirely transferable. And so once you learn how to set up HubSpot or your marketing software on one system, literally it's plugging into different pipes when you move to that next company or next organization. By the way, invest in a good CRM of some sort or CRM or marketing system. It makes a difference for any business. Again, literally it could be a $50,000 business. There's free CRMs out there for that.
Yeah. It's surprising too, to that point, let's say small business anywhere from, I typically say under $20 million all the way down. A lot of businesses don't have CRMs. They kind of keep things, whether it be on a spreadsheet or it might be some convoluted type of database where it's not really all brought together. And it is kind of dollars out the door that get lost because of that lack of history all in one spot and way to follow up. So that's a great point. Going back to the compensation for how the business is doing as a whole. When you bring that up, are we talking just strictly around profitability, or what are those measures? What are those markers that we would look at?
Sure. Well, it goes back to my notion of incentives. What matters for your business? Some businesses care about profit. Some care about balance sheet strength. Some care about growth, right? Some care about leads in the door. So you may want to incentivize your marketing team on bringing in good leads. You may want to incentivize your sales team on closing leads or closing leads quickly. You may want to, I run a software business. I want to incentivize my engineers to write code fast and error-free, right? So the incentives you structure don't necessarily have to be organization-wide, but need to be targeted for that individual, how he or she can affect what matters to you at the top level as the CEO or owner of a company, right? So we've tried, not just we at IdeaScale have really tried to tailor how we measure and incentivize people by their role and how they make an impact on the company. So a junior support person is very much measured on, hey, how quickly are they and effectively are they responding to customer support requests? The head of engineering is incentivized as an owner of the business because I want him to think not about what's happening today, next month, next week. I want him to have that same 5-year vision and incentive. And so he's not, trying to do something or steal from the future to make his numbers today, but rather thinking, hey, 5 years later, we're trying to create the juggernaut within our space. How do we achieve that best?
Okay. If I'm asking anything too confidential, feel free to push back on me.
It's all, yeah.
How do you do this? So are you kind of looking at, when you're setting this up for employees, you're kind of looking at, okay, are they an owner across the business? And then we're going to set goals that have an impact across the business as a whole. And then, well, this person really is more to their function, and therefore we're going to put goal. Is that, how many layers does that have? Or is it just that simple, 2 layers?
Probably there's like four, and given our organization, which has about 100 people across 7 countries now, we probably have about 4 different layers. Well, there's a hierarchical layer and there's a functional layer, because the way you want to incentivize an engineer is very different than marketing, because engineering is a long-term investment. You spend 6 months writing a piece of code that'll take 3 years to pay off. Whereas marketing, in theory, if you're doing marketing well, you do marketing today and you get sales leads, a week or a month from now. So there's a hierarchical implementation. Like the senior most people, they are all tied to the company rather than like what they did in their little department. Whereas the junior people are more tied to their, what did they do today or yesterday or last week or last quarter? And then there's the functional. Marketing is incentivized differently than engineering, than sales, than HR, for example.
Got it. Now, when did you introduce this methodology? Was it from day one?
So this is the third time I've implemented this. And on each occasion, it was within the first month of joining. So the first 2 opportunities with the trucking company and the shoe company, I literally sat down with my co-executives there and said like, hey, I would like to introduce this. Here's the rationale. They agreed and we rolled it out within, weeks. Here, I think I did it like second week out.
Wow.
That I said like, this is the way I want to move. It took about 3 or 4 months to fully implement it, because that's obviously a dramatic change for an organization that wasn't necessarily thinking or incentivized that way. But yeah, it was a day one like decision, because look, you're in any business, your most important resource is your people. It's a cliche, but it's true. And so you want to make sure those resources are incredibly well utilized and motivated to do what's right for your business.
Okay. So let's just example here. $1 million a year business. They're bringing down 10% net profit. So they're $100,000, I'll just say. This is after some officer compensation. They're like, hey, I think I should be implementing in this business. I have some people that aren't all in tune with what we're doing. If you could just share some action items, and sorry to put you on the spot here, but
Sure.
I have a feeling you're going to hit a home run. What would you do if this was your case and you were going to, introduce this?
So I'll give a tactical theoretical example. Let's imagine there's somebody that you think can help take your business from $100,000. And let's imagine number one, profits are what matter to you. Okay. Instead of revenue, just for simplicity.
Sure.
Let's imagine there's somebody in your organization that you think can take your profits from $100,000 a year to $200,000 a year, right? But you just need them to hustle more, work harder, whatever it is, right? How much should you pay them? I'd say economic theory says you don't give them a $5,000 bonus. They just made you 100,000, like 5,000 may not actually make a difference to them, like versus whatever their base salary or bonus was. Say, and here's the deal you would strike with them. Say like, look, hey, employee, or hey, officer of my company, you help me get from 100,000 to 200,000. Half of that is yours, or 33%, because then that matters to them, right? If somebody's getting $50,000, and that's a win-win. They made you 50 and they made themselves 50. Right. And you only have to pay them that 50 once. You get to keep that $50,000 profit for the next 20 years. So you may actually make $1 million over the next 20 years, and you only pay them $50,000, which is great for you and great for them. Right. And next year they're incentivized to take you from 200 to 300 or 200 to 250. Give them people like the tactical advice or nugget there is people under reward people who create extraordinary outcomes for them. Right. Mm-hmm. When they create an extraordinary outcome for them, reward them in such a way that they and others around them will be incentivized to create those extraordinary outcomes repeatedly year on year on year.
If you're a business owner feeling stuck in your business, overwhelmed, responsible for everything that happens, and working long hours, Tyler helps his clients develop processes, hire high-performing team members, and better understand their financial metrics and numbers to allow for a more predictable, less hands-on business. To schedule a free, no-pressure consultation, head to thinktyler.com and click the meeting button. Tyler would love to see if he can help you work on your business, not in your business. Schedule a consultation today at thinktyler.com. Think life, think success, think business.
Reward them in such a way that they and others around them will be incentivized to create those extraordinary outcomes repeatedly year on year on year.
Okay. That's interesting. I was thinking when you were throwing out numbers, I'm like, okay, 33% would be fair. But it takes guts when you say 50%. I mean, that gets people's attention.
But you get to keep that. Remember, you as the owner get to keep that 50,000 for the next 20 years. So that's called lifetime value of those earnings is 20 years times $50,000, $1 million.
Yeah.
Well, hell, let's be exaggerative. Let's imagine you gave them 90%. So you're giving them $90,000, but you kept $10,000 a year for 20 years. That's $200,000 for you. So you're giving them a 90, you're keeping 200 for yourself. Why is that bad?
Right. No, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, that would definitely get their attention. And assuming the business is residual, I guess you could argue in some cases it might not be residual.
Yeah. Look, if it's a one-time thing, you have to incentivize
Yeah,
differently, right?
yeah,
Then you may do it. That's how like a one-time, if I sell software, so all my revenue is recurring. But if you're selling a burger, look, you may want to make it, the percentages in specific math may vary, but the nugget is like people under reward the extraordinary contributors to their business.
yeah.
Reward, in a way that doesn't make a difference. If you're giving somebody a 5% raise, like it's nice, but it's not going to change their behavior. The whole point of compensation or incentive compensation is to change someone's behavior and make them do something different today than they would have absent that plan. And a 5% raise just isn't going to change, so the person is not going to show up 5 minutes earlier for a 5% raise. You tell them, hey, you're going to get a 50 or 80% raise or bonus. They're going to show up a couple hours earlier, stay a couple hours later. They're going to hustle. They're not going to take those, 3-hour-long coffee breaks, right? They're going to work their butts off for you. And that's a win-win for everyone.
Yeah, yeah.
And by the way, if they don't do that, great. It didn't cost you anything because it was incentive based. Like give huge incentives to people to perform extraordinary ways.
Yeah, I love that. I really do.
By the way, you see this at large companies all the time where this is why CEOs get like, the new CEO of Chipotle's got like $100 million compensation package. People are complaining about it, but he's got to do a lot to transform, Chipotle or sorry, Starbucks. I meant,
yeah, I was going to say,
he's got to turn $100 billion. Yeah. If he turns $100 billion business into a $200 billion business, shareholders made $100 billion and he made $100 million. Is that unfair? No, it's a great share. The shareholders made 1,000 times more than he personally gets rewarded if he achieves his goals.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. Hey, on the same note, so, one of the biggest things, cash flow comes up a lot, especially in the small business world. What have you done in your organizations as far as managing cash flow? Do you have any certain tenements that you kind of focus around to stay cash flow positive?
Yeah, so software is a bit of a different business because in a well-run software business, you actually get paid up front. So like if you're running a burger business, you got to buy your buns, your beef, your cheese up front, and it takes you a week to sell it, right? So you actually have to put out money before you get paid yourself. That's called positive working capital. For software or well-run software businesses, this could be Microsoft, this could be Google, this could be me. And we get paid by our customers before, right? And then I spend, I get paid by my customers on day one, and then I spend the next year paying my customers and my operating costs. So that is a very fortunate place that software businesses are, and actually airlines too. Because you buy your ticket before you ever hop on a plane. So if you're a software business, great. If you're not a software business, it's really tough to. That's a functional nature of that business. The thing that a lot of owners can do is think about other ways they can manage their working capital, like. The classic way is like, hey, if you've got 15-day payment terms, can you negotiate with your vendors to change that to 30 days? Turns out a lot of vendors, if you're willing to give them a % more fee or something to extend from 15 days to 30, you just increase your monthly cash flow by about a half a month's worth of cash flow. That's great. And that's 1% again for your vendor, which is a lot of more money to them because their gross margin went from 10% to 11%, a lot of money for them. But conversely, you just, you increase or decrease your working capital load by 50%. If you can get every vendor to agree to a 15-day increase.
Yeah, that's powerful. So on this note of, I love that explanation you just gave on terms of cash flow. On this note of cash flow and just finances general, what you see a lot of times in the business community is people don't know finances. They're scared of them. They either haven't been trained or it's just foreign to them. What's your thoughts around that? Like, do you think it's okay to just hire someone and pass the baton to them and let them know everything?
Well, yes and no.
Okay.
So I'll give an example from the shoe company. The two co-founders who founded that shoe company, they were great at operations. They understood marketing, but the finance was not their specialty. And they hired me as their kind of CFO at that point because I was a Wall Street guy. I understand how all the finances work. Not an accountant, by the way, like an actual financial officer, which is different than somebody who knows accounting, which is a valuable skill separately, right? I would say, number one, it's okay to hire somebody else, but don't focus on hiring someone who actually understands the finances of running a business, which is distinct and candidly sometimes more expensive than hiring an accountant, right? If finances are not your specialty, go hire someone who is, and hire someone good who is, because managing your finances matter. If you can't make payroll or if you run out of cash, your business is done. And if you're not good at figuring out your cash and money situation, go hire someone who is. It's simple as that. It's like a really rewarding thing. And like this is a bit of tooting my own horn, but like the two co-founders of the shoe business, they were like, hey, we wish we'd hired like a CFO before we started negotiating with the venture capitalists, because not their specialty. And they would love to have somebody like me on their side, negotiating the finances, but also managing the day-to-day stuff. Because like it just improved the cash flow dramatically. I think within 3 months of joining, our cash burn rate had decreased by 60% just due to
Wow.
like small tweaks. Right. And that doesn't have to be me doing it. There's a lot of talented, extraordinary finance people. It's a valuable skill, but it is a skill no different than being a chef. Right. You want a great meal, go hire a good chef if you don't know how to do it yourself.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I read in my research about you, I just want to talk about this a little bit. Getting off topic here, it's common for me to do this. What do you like about playing poker? I know in reading about you, you have a passion about this.
Yeah, I was playing like semi-professionally for a while and could probably make enough money to make an okay living. There's three things I love about poker. Number one, I'm a theoretical mathematician, so anything that's got math in it, I love. Right? Poker's a tremendous amount. People think about poker as like a game of machismo and staring down your opponent. It's like 90% of the game is math and maybe 10% psychology. So I love the math aspect. Number two, I love that is a competitive game. Right? I'm a big competitor. I love even at things I suck at. I like competing. I suck at soccer. I still play it like every Sunday. It's fun to compete, right? It's been a part of the way I was raised. I love doing it. That's why I, try and run Idea Scale, because I want to go out and win for my team, for my customers, for my employees, for my shareholders out there against, the broader capitalist world. And then the third is I like the notion of calculated risk, right? Nothing in life worth having comes easy. And in poker, even the best decisions have some risk of being wrong or blowing up in your face. I could have two aces and you could have two twos. Turns out you're still going to beat me 20% of the time. I made the right decision, but there's that adrenaline feeling that, hey, I did the right decision. I was going to win 80% of the time, but you still, with your crappy hand, you still beat me 1 out of 5 times. And I like that sort of careful, risk-adjusted decision making, because the real world is risky and you have to be willing to take calculated risks in whatever you do in life, dating, business, poker, whatever it is.
You kind of answered my follow-up question, but I love where you were taking this. So the whole like calculated risk, how much of that are you in growing your own business? You're 100 employees now, a $10 million a year company. How much are you like doing things where you're like, hey, this is a calculated risk? And are you going, here's the downside, here's the upside, and where's that meter? As you get now at your $10 million, does that meter get less risky or is it still the same? I'm curious how you handle that.
So I'll answer the back half of your question before I answer the first half. So from a purely theoretical economics perspective, the size of your business shouldn't matter for your risk tolerance. That's inherent that's something that's inherent to you as an individual, not as a function of your business. From a purely theoretical, economics perspective. So whether, assuming I'm a perfectly rational person, I may not be, whether I'm running a $1 million business, $10 million, $10 billion business, the decision-making process and the math remains exactly the same. Now, tactically, that's exactly how we make decisions at Idea Scale, risk-based return. So I'll give a very tactical example. When you run a marketing campaign, right, you allocate a certain budget to it, or an advertising campaign. It could be to hire somebody to make some art, to run Google ads, whatever it is. You're making a bet, right? Hey, that this Google ads will generate some amount of revenue for me or some amount of notoriety for me. And it may not. So you took a bet. And whenever we make a decision at Idea Scale, we're like, okay, there's some probability it's going to succeed. There's some probability it's going to fail. If it fails, and so we acknowledge we have some chance of failure. So number one, when it fails, no one gets blamed for that, right? We don't fire people because the marketing campaigns fail. It's like, look, we knew before we started it, there was a 20% chance this is going to fail. So, hey, just turned out this was one of the 5 times. But then when we take bets, we're like, okay, this is going to fail, but for the times it does succeed, it's got to pay for the times it fails. So we may run 5 marketing campaigns. We know one of them is going to fail, but the other 4 will more than pay for the one that failed. No one gets blamed. And in fact, it encourages us to take calculated risks. So we run a bunch of marketing campaigns and some are wrong. And same with product development. We launch, 30 features a year on the software side. 5 of them may be terrible and we just have to shut them off. And it's like, oh, we wasted a bunch of engineers' time. But guess what? The other 25 were pretty good. All right. No one gets in trouble. It's like a calculated ex ante risk that we made our best analytical guess, but we know we can be wrong and we are very comfortable with that.
When you're doing these calculated risks, are you like assessing a percentage of, this got a 70% chance of success? Is there a certain threshold that you're looking for?
We don't think about percentage of success that matters, but rather expected value. So an example is, let's imagine we're taking a bet where we know 99% of the time we're just going to lose everything, right? Think of like buying a lottery ticket. But if you know that 1% of the time you win, you make $100,000 or like 1,000x your money, that's still a good decision. Even though 99 times of the time you're going to fail, the one time you do win, you pay for everything that failed and then some. So
Got
that's
it.
called expected value math. If you want to read about it, it's in Wikipedia, or you can think back to your, in 10th grade math classes, but it's actually the way like well-run businesses make decisions. And it's something like we took from Wall Street. That's how we would make like $100 million, $1 billion bets, and applying it's the same math works for running a business. You should always, every day, try and make expected value positive decisions, whether in your business life or in your private life.
Wow. And I'm sure you were doing this expected value when you were doing the poker too, right? Like you were
Oh,
probably
100%. Poker is literally, if you pick up there's a book called The Mathematics of Poker by Bill Chen. I think he was a University of Illinois or MIT guy. It's considered the Bible of poker. And ignoring all the algebra stuff, the basic thing is let's try and calculate is expected value greater than zero or less than zero. Is this a good decision or bad decision? A bunch of fancy math to literally come out, is the number positive or negative? And if it's negative, don't do it. And if it's positive, you should always do it.
I have a picture in my mind. Like when you were doing poker, did you have the dark glasses on and the hat pulled down?
No. I would have I guess a laptop, and I'd be doing work or watching watching Netflix or cartoons on an iPad, or twiddling through Instagram or something. I was not the poker hoodie, sunglasses, bracelet guy. God.
I love watching those. Sometimes I'll watch like those World Series of Poker and the dynamics that they create for the drama of it is funny because each character has such a kind of personality in the way they look and they behave. It's funny. Anyway, so that's all good stuff. Last thing I'd love to just wrap up with for entrepreneurs. Can you give us something, maybe a takeaway, something maybe we haven't covered already in terms of words of wisdom or things that you can do to build? You've always been very successful in building and scaling a business. Anything around building and scaling a business, any type of tips you can leave us with?
So I'll offer two tips, one on the buildings and one on the scaling. On the building a business, a lot of people start businesses without knowing why they're starting a business. Is it because you want to become a billionaire and you want to be the next Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos? Is it for money? Is it for you like the independence? Hey, I'm going to make less money than if I worked a big fancy corporate job, but I get to be my own boss. If I don't want to work today, I just don't know. Is it that you like building something, right? I was a carpenter throughout high school. I love the feeling, hey, I built this at the end of the summer, right? If you're starting a business, be honest with yourself on why you're doing it. It could be financial, could be emotional. Just know why you're doing it, because otherwise, like, you're doing it kind of randomly. And that's a bad way to make decisions that matter to you in life, right? What you do for professionally, obviously, is like 80% of your waking hours. Know why you're doing it. For those scaling a business, the advice I'd offer is like, be honest with yourself. Is that your skill set? Are you the visionary person who's like should be on TV and talking to people? Or is your skill set being the nuts and bolts like guy or gal who can run the day-to-day business and enjoys dealing with the HR minutia and the financial minutia and the marketing and the spreadsheets? If that's not your skill set, that's perfectly okay. Go be the visionary person on TV and go hire someone else to be the your COO or whatever title, right? That's, I think, one of the things a lot of people fail in scaling up businesses is they have the visionary person who had like the genius idea initially, but is not the person who should be running the business day to day and scaling it from 1 million to 10 million to 100 million to a billion. That's a fundamentally different skill set in life.
Does cash flow have you down? Profit not where you think it should be? Maybe it's the long hours. Let's meet to see if I can help. I bridge driving the financial performance of your business to hit growth and success targets. Book a complimentary meeting at meetforgrowth.com to get started now. Once again, that's meetforgrowth.com. I look forward to talking with you. And thanks for listening to the show.
Is not the person who should be running the business day to day and scaling it from 1 million to 10 million to 100 million to a billion. That's a fundamentally different skill set in life.
Yeah. I think when, as you say that, EOS comes to mind. I think it handles that. It's a methodology for scaling a business. And I think it handles that really well. It separates that, getting the owner to think as a visionary, if that's their role and they're comfortable with that. And then kind of implementing that COO or operator level person to handle the tasks that the nuts and bolts of getting them to the next level or whatever level they want to get to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's a good point. Okay, well, that's great. So your website, ideascale.com. I'll put this in my show notes, ideascale.com. If people wanted to reach out to you, Nick, anywhere else you want them to go?
Yeah, 3 ways you could reach out to me. Number one, if you go to ideascale.com and ask the support chat, anyone on our support chat to talk to Nick, they'll actually connect you. That's a real human being you're talking to 24/7. Wow. Secondly is my LinkedIn. If you search for Nick Jain on LinkedIn, I respond to like 100% of messages on there that are not spam. And number three, My email is nick.jain@ideascale.com. Feel free to reach out. I'll be glad to help out however I can.
Is it okay if I also put the email address in my show notes?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, cool.
People can, search anybody's email pretty easily. So there's I don't find any point in hiding it ever.
Makes sense. Okay, well, awesome, Nick. You dropped a lot of wisdom in a very short amount of time. I super appreciate it. Wish you continued success. And thanks for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Tyler. I really appreciate it.
That's all for this episode of Think Business with Tyler. But we have plenty more resources to help you in your pursuit of business excellence on our website at thinktyler.com. If you'd like to be featured in a future episode of the show, feel free to reach out to us on social media at think_Tyler. We look forward to helping you think life, think success, and think business.